There is a vast monster of a man, with a hideous grin torn across the mask that keeps stalking my every move. Similar to a hunter, he tracks us, priming devastating traps amongst the greenery. Extreme vigilance and a light step is essential in avoiding the blood-curdling crunch of a bear trap, or the clutches of what I've taken to calling the miserable, smiling killer. I have but many times managed to get caught in one of these traps. I have nothing but a fear of the feeding of a blunt trap spikes grinding against my bones, or for the heavy and deliberate footsteps which always inevitably reveal a plastered, sadistic grin. With the traps and the trapper, it has so far been a constant battle between looking up and looking down. Benedict Baker's Journal. My first video to ever break 1,000 views was a video where I spent roughly 12 minutes ranting about the Trapper and his issues within gameplay before launching into an overcomplicated mess of feature bloat to his power in an attempt to quote-unquote fix him. Much like a madly in love and young dumb girl, that was not exactly what I ended up doing. I was incredibly rushed in dismissing several add-ons when overlooking them, and overall, looking back on that video, I really wish I had taken more time with the script and spent more time editing and reviewing my words. I wish I had waited a tad longer until I had more experience, and at most, I wish I had taken more time to break down my issues with him. I made a video last year going into depth on counter-arguments toward improving Trapper, which, believe it or not, there is, and that video still holds relevance. But if I want to fix Trapper, if I want to truly explore the killer, everything that can be done with him, and everything wrong with him, I feel like I could do a much better job. Today, I am officially announcing the end of the How to Fix and Dearly Designed series. It's been fun, and I did enjoy doing them, but I want to give every killer, and every survivor eventually, the time, effort, and energy they deserve. So welcome to the start of my analysis series, where I break down everything about a character, their lore, themes, designs, gameplay, perks, add-ons, and more. I suggest changes where I think I need them, and I praise what needs to be praised. It's going to be a long one, so take a seat, make sure you got your favorite snacks, and let's analyze Evan McMillan, otherwise known as the Trapper. Side note, I do not know at the time of recording this how long this video is going to be, so to be helpful, I have put chapters in the description down below, so if you only have interest in one or the other subjects regarding the Trapper, you can watch what you want when you want. Hope you guys enjoy the video. Picture a mound of clay, one that you can shape into any form you want. This is the mind of a child. We, as kids, are molded by many things. Our environment, our experiences, but mostly the adults in our lives. The adults are the people we are meant to take after when we are children. We mimic their actions, their words, their beliefs. After all, we know no better. They are the guardians. They are the guides in this fresh, open experience that we are just stumbling through. It is not until later in life, as we meet more people, learn more information, and experience more of the world, that we begin to form a personality separated from the adults who raised us. Sometimes. Evan McMillan, at one point in time, was his own person. One who feared his father, one who secretly plotted on his father's downfall, working with the workers of his father's mines to start a union. He held the secret, and it made him feel big and powerful. He was finally, for the first time in his life, above his father. 14 is an age where many children start to rebel, start to form their own opinions, beliefs, and personalities, and Evan was no exception. But abuse is a powerful tool to manipulators. As we know, abuse can take more forms than just physical. There is also emotional abuse, the constant assurance that someone is not worth anything, that they cannot be anything more than they are, and mental abuse, which, in my opinion, is the worst kind. Evan's father mentally abused him by constantly showing Evan the physical abuse he dealt to the workers of the mines with beatings and lashings, the emotional abuse of calling them maggots and making Evan do the same, the mental abuse of low wages and long working hours. Evan was mentally abused by forcing him to dehumanize even those he called friends. Evan's father taught Evan through a long process of events that Evan was above it all. above everyone else but his own father. In a world full of people lower than he, only his father stood above him. And in the end, it was these lessons that formed the psychopath we would come to know. The Trapper is an interesting case. He's a character with barely any lore available. The story I've summarized for you is a small tidbit from when he was 14. The intro to this video is a journal entry from outside of that. We only ever get hints in 2 separate archive entries at more of his history. I often hear that the spikes on his back are the entity forcing him into compliance, but I can't find that anywhere. In fact, I can't even find the moment he was brought into the fog. I don't know if I'm looking in the wrong place, but I've tried the wiki, the game, Google. I can find nothing more than what I've told you. There's always his base lore, the 2 short paragraphs or so that you can read besides his character model in the info tab, but it's, well, empty. It says Evan was a ruthless boss in his adult years, and it's implied he killed his father, but 2 sentences before that, it said that he did whatever his father asked. It could be in his later years his father asked Evan to kill him, but it's never clearly stated. This is, unfortunately, a result of Trapper being the first killer ever made for the game, and the fact that, at the time, Behavior wasn't sure if they were even going to make more beyond this. Their silly little hide-and-seek game was probably expected to die in a few months, like most live service games do. It wasn't until later on Behavior stood up and went, "Oh, shit, maybe we need to get some professional fucking writers in here." And it's kind of sad, too. I want to learn more about the Trapper. In Tome 3, Arcus 1256, the Observer mentions he found more memories about Evan's descent into madness, and I want to know more about that.
Hey guys, Editor Kaiser here. So I feel kind of embarrassed. So that section that I just did, that I just showed you, where I gave a screenshot of the Arcus 1256, I read that paragraph probably about a dozen times while writing this video, and I just noticed that the last sentence says, "Either way, I would not expect him to comply with another authority figure, even if that figure was an old one." The reason I wanted to bring this up real quick is because earlier in this section, I said that I couldn't find any place where it directly states that the entity needs to manipulate Trapper into doing the trials. And I think that this might be where people get that from, because, I understand how people are interpreting it this way, because I interpret it this way. When I'm reading that sentence, I'm recognizing that the entity needs to get Trapper to do what he wants through force, because, like I said earlier in this section, the Trapper, or Evan himself, believes he is higher than everybody else except his father. So even an old god would not be able to breach Evan's ego or superiority complex, which I think adds a new layer of depth. However, this realization doesn't necessarily change my final conclusion on the lore. But I just wanted to go ahead and give that correction. I now think I figured out where people got the whole, spikes mean the entity is forcing Evan into compliance thing. I hope I'm right, but the comment section will no doubt tell me. Back to the original script. Evan was, at his core, a good kid who wanted the workers in his father's mines to have rights and freedoms, only to later become the harsh and abusive employer his father was. Evan knows his father murdered his mother and his uncle, and there's also this weird obsession with bears that never really gets expanded on. Unfortunately, because of some of the problems within what would otherwise be an amazing lore bit, for the lore, I'll give Behavior a 2 out of 5. There's so much potential here, but unfortunately, it all falls just a bit too short. If you're a fan of audio horror stories, then check out my second channel, where I write, voice, and produce my own original stories, released every single Sunday, so you can go to bed with your creeps at night. Link is in the description. I wanted to talk about the flavor text on the Trapper's perks and add-ons. I wanted to, but there isn't any. Every add-on is some bare bones basic description of why the add-on does what it does, which is cool and straightforward, but unlike what we will see with later killers, there's no personal effects, no character in them. His perks are a little better, being quotes from the Observer or
Benedict Baker, whichever one, but again, it shows nothing about the Trapper as a person. The perks, however, do paint one picture, though. The Trapper is a brute. A large, impeding presence that is as scary as he is big. Which is kind of funny given the Trapper is shorter than the fucking Plague, but I'm guessing his muscles make up for it. Flavor-wise, I like the perks and the picture that they paint. Gameplay-wise, we'll get to that later. The Trapper's animations are, well, I won't say they are bad. Trapper's wipe animation is pretty cool, using his arm to smear the blood along his massive cleaver, which is an interesting choice. The cleaver is a butcher's tool. Why the son of a wealthy mine owner who has an obsession with bears would be using one as a weapon is, quite frankly, beyond me. Again, probably a product of a bygone time when this was a flimsy excuse to have the most unrelated Jason parody in your game. Yeah, did you know he's supposed to be based off Jason Voorhees? Big knife and a mask. Fucking nailed it. I would think his weapon would be a pickaxe, but even in the fucking miner skin that he gets, no. No. Save that for the cosmetics section. But I will say I like the way Trapper looms around when he walks. He walks with purpose, and that's always pretty interesting. I just wish his music wasn't so bland. It's the default music in Terror Radius, which in my mind shouldn't even be a thing. There should be no default of anything. Every killer should come with their own music. Yeah, product of the time, I get it. But what I'm getting at is a lot of these "the killer was the first one released" excuses should be thrown out the window. This game is coming up on its 8th year since its release, and it's about time they go back in and update all these old killers. Give them love and character and charm. Speaking of a lack of charm, the Trapper's Mori is so goddamn boring. I don't want to cover Naughty Bear right now, that's for the next section, but in my opinion, the Trapper's Mori should be him shoving the survivor's head in a bear trap and then probably stomping on it a few times. Or even, and this would be possible if he had a pickaxe, letting a survivor step into a trap and then driving the pickaxe into their chest over and over again, with all the brutality and cruelty he's known for. As it stands, standing on their back end, wildly swinging the cleaver is basic and dull. It shows a lack of creativity and personality. For themes, I am prepared to give Behavior another 2 out of 5. Here as well, like his lore, there's too much potential not acted on, and it leaves too much to be desired. I don't know what I expected when it comes to this category. I was originally going to do this really weird tier list concept, but I felt as if that felt out of place in this video. Then I realized I have an entire other section where I make a tier list of how well each perk works with the Trapper. So for all my forethought, planning, and dedication to making this video, I still have managed to have a section where my brain turns to mush and I contradict myself. I spent a day or so thinking about taking this section out of the video. Who cares about cosmetics, right? I mean, they are simply bonus things you can buy later on, but then I realized that cosmetics show something. They show dedication, understanding, and creativity. You can do anything with the character's cosmetics. You can create wild designs and deviate from the norm, or you can make every single skin seem like a slight variation of the base skin, and that's what Behavior did. Kind of. If I was only going off the skins in the shop, this section would get a 1 out of 5. The skins for Trapper, for the most part, are dull and don't do much to change his look and feel. Some of them, like the seaweed one, are even messy and unpolished, and the hockey one is just an absolute slap in the face to anyone expecting Jason to come to this game anytime soon. I think I'll make a video on Jason in Dead by Daylight in the future. Might already be out by the time you see this video, I don't know. I am also exceedingly pissed that this My Bloody Valentine looking skin we got from one of the rifts does not have a pickaxe for a weapon. I mean it, this actually boils my blood. It frustrates me, by all intents and purposes, that Trapper doesn't have a pickaxe as a weapon. I don't know how to explain why this pisses me off so much, but if there was ever a place for you to give him a pickaxe as a weapon, it would be the skin that is literally based off of a miner. Ah! But what elevates Trapper skins, in my opinion, are 2 different ones, the Krampus and the Naughty Bear. Now, Krampus kind of depresses me because Behavior, for whatever reason, have removed it from the shop, and it's only available at Christmas time because, God forbid, we don't give people a reason to give us money year-round. But I love the Krampus, a towering horned creature looming over the survivors. I love everything about this skin, and this year, I'm probably going to buy it because it's just so amazing. But the cosmetic worth talking about is Naughty Bear. Now, I made an entire video surrounding Naughty Bear and the implications of the skin back around the time of its release. The TLDW version is, I am worried that the skin sets a bad precedent for behavior to not update old Moris or sell new Moris in the shop, but tie them to full-fledged skins instead. While I like Naughty Bear, hell, I'll be using Naughty Bear for most of the B-roll of this video, if not all of it, I still am worried for the future of custom Moris in the game. Outside of that, I love everything about it. The sounds, the narrators, the animations, the Mori. It's amazing, and these two skins elevate the score by a ton. So, for cosmetics, I give behavior a 3.5 out of 5. Make more skins like Naughty Bear and Krampus. And also the Blighted one looks pretty sick. How long has it been since I first played with you, Evan? Since I first set my first trap, only to hear it moments later get disarmed, and the first of many tears fell upon my desk. I didn't know it then, but in that moment, I knew. You were going to be absolute dog shit. Melodrama aside, the Trapper is the worst killer in the game, and I will not be taking any arguments on that. The Trapper is bad. He's horrible even. The only killer who can be left as a pure M1 killer with no redeeming qualities, because his power is reliant on you taking a fucking expedition across the Andes to get it. The Trapper's power is the Bear Trap. You can start the game with 2 as base kit, 3 with the green add-on, Trapper Bag, and 10 with the purple add-on, Trapper Sack. These also affect your carry capacity, which means that you can only hold 2 as a base, 3 with Bag, and all 10 with Sack. Except Sack comes with this really shitty caveat that you can't move your traps after you place them, because might as well nerf the killer even more while we're at it. We will cover add-ons in depth later on. For now, the main focus is the power and gameplay. So let's judge it as it is. When you spawn into the game, you will find you are the only killer in the entire roster of 35 fucking killers who has to collect your power. And no, Oni is not a killer that has to collect his power. See, the Oni quote-unquote collects his power by interacting with the survivors, taking chase and doing things. Your lumbering ass picked Trapper, so you have to walk around the map dumbfounded, looking shamelessly at the ground and ignoring the survivors so you can pick them up from nearby generators. You can't carry more than 2 at a time, though. We wouldn't want you to be able to have some sort of gameplay or anything. No. First, you must set your first 2 fucking traps and then go on your scavenger hunt, you little fucking Easter Bunny! Thankfully, recently, the Trapper ended up getting a couple of buffs. Not that these buffs raised his power level or anything. I'd almost be willing to call them quality of life changes if I didn't think some of you would start being pedantic in the comments section. After placing a trap, the Trapper receives a 7.5% haste effect for 5 seconds. This brings his walking speed up from 4.6 to roughly 4.8, if I'm doing my math correctly, which I'm probably not. It doesn't seem like much, and that's because it isn't. You see, setting a trap takes 2.5 seconds, so the survivors move at 4.0 meters a second as a base level. The haste is meant to let you catch up for lost ground, but the survivor in the time you set the trap will have made roughly 8.5 meters of distance in that time, and it will take you around 1.5 seconds to make that same distance, saving you essentially half a second of time, which is not as much as you would save if you just avoided placing the trap mid-chase and mind-gamed the survivor. See, even though the haste effect doesn't trigger until after the trap setting animation is finished, you still lose more time than you would if you just M1'd the scurrying little roaches. Realistically, the haste effect should have been the opposite, and instead it should have been a 7.5% haste effect for 5 seconds after a trap is triggered or disarmed. I mean, as one of my commenters pointed out once, it makes more sense lore-wise. Of course Evan is going to be hauling ass when he catches his prey, or they mess with his traps. Why wouldn't he? The other buff the Trapper received was letting all traps spawn near generators, as opposed to at random-ass locations around the map. This saves a lot of time you would have wasted before, but it's still a fundamental problem, keeping Trapper slow to start and limiting what can actually be done with him. I'm now going to say what is apparently a controversial statement, but the Trapper should spawn with all his traps, No, stop. Get your hands off the keyboard and get out of that comment section. I do not want to hear your multi-paragraph ramblings about how Trapper spawning with all his traps would lead to some apocalypse where every other game will devolve into Basement Trapper that you will apparently think has little to no counterplay and isn't the weakest Trapper build in existence. I covered this in my The Trapper Problem video, and I don't like repeating myself, but I'm going to do my best to pre-summarize here. Basement Trapper is ass. It's a big fat smelly ass. It's a dirty ass after a Taco Bell shit. Basement Trapper is one of the most easily played around strategies in the entire history of gaming. First off, you can avoid the basement area most of the time. Like 99.9% of the time, you can go an entire game and be nowhere near close enough to the basement for even a backpack build to get you there. Unless the map is really tiny, like something like Rotten Fields. Second, even if you are caught in the basement, your teammates just need to, and stay with me here, disarm the traps or avoid them altogether, which is almost easily done. And finally, if all else fails, one dude has a really bad time and has to stay on the hook while the rest smash gens. It sucks. Sure, but let's not pretend for a fraction of a second that this would be such a common occurrence. It would ruin all of your lives. Outside of a handful of meme lords who will try desperately to make Basement Trapper work and have it work once out of every 25 games if they are lucky, this will not be a problem. Trapper players know and understand that the best strategy is either quadrant control, that's where you find 1/4 of the map, generally a fourth of it, and set up there, or loop lockdown, where you use every loop you come across, including shack, and weaken them with 1 to 2 traps per loop. Secondly, the Trapper's trap should work like every other trap-based killer. Hag, Freddy, Singularity, Demo, and so on, when he places his last trap down, the next one he places should just replace the first one he placed. Very simple, very easy, and these two changes alone would solve an infinite amount of issues with this killer. Now, back in my original Trapper video, I overloaded so much bullshit onto the base kit of the traps themselves. A lot of problem with the traps is that they are too easily spotted and disarmed, but their hitboxes are also the most asinine things about this entire power. The survivors can, and will, walk right over traps by stepping on the arms of the trap instead of the mouth. You, however, do not get this luxury. Your hitbox is too big. You fatty. Top this off with the fact that these things are some of the most easily spotted objects in the game, and you have a killer whose entire power relies on the survivors making mistakes, and that's just not fun. Now, I'm not going to go all crazy on you and load a blunderbuss full of massive changes to be shot all over the character. I only want 3 things. 1. Escaping traps is a flat bar taking 6 seconds to escape. This is a compromise from the 1.8 seconds to attempt up to a total of 6 attempts. This kind of randomness doesn't even make logical sense. You're simply trying to pry the bars apart. If someone else attempts to rescue you, it will take the same 1.8 seconds it does now. 2. Traps give deep wounds as base kit. This doesn't affect anything outside of giving traps more slowdown, a mending timer. While small, it is still something that survivors would need to keep in mind, and I think that this would go a very long way in giving a lot of power to a character that doesn't have much to begin with. And 3, please, make the hitbox of the trap also be the arms. Please, behavior. Just for me. Just for me. Honestly, I find it kind of sad the Trapper has so many problems that, in my opinion, are very easily solved. Things that I assume wouldn't take long to code. Then again, I'm not a coder. I make dick jokes on the internet and write long analysis videos about video game characters. I may have an IQ of 180, but don't let that fool you. I'm a bumbling fucking idiot. And it's a shame, too. Trapper, not the fact I'm a dumbass. Because conceptually, Trapper's power might actually be my favorite. When you do catch survivors with a well-placed trap, it triggers the dopamine receptors in the same way cross-map snipes with Billy do, or a well-placed Deathslinger shot does. I love Trapper as a concept, but in execution, he feels clunky, unintuitive, and downright useless at times. The overall map dependency of Trapper is also insane, but it's interesting because his map dependency isn't even a reliable thing to count on. What I mean is, Trapper's good maps are barely in his favor, and his bad maps make him damn near unplayable. He needs small maps that are tight, dark, and have good ways to hide the traps. And they've nerfed some of those areas, like the ones on Ormond that I'm hopefully putting on the screen right now. Okay, so I think, or I know. Hello? Hello? You can't trap this window anymore? Why the fuck not? Yeah, you can't do the hidden trap anymore. They won't let you do the hidden traps. Dude, this is fucked. The only maps that really fit are Mid-Bitch and maybe RPD, but realistically, he just loses more than he wins in the map department. And again, even on maps that are good for him, they aren't good enough to make up for his weaknesses. I just wish we had more. All of Trapper's issues culminate in wins not feeling satisfying. Instead, you feel like, thank fuck, that's over. And losses feel fucking terrible. Because once you go against survivors who know how to pay attention, you're in for the most infuriating matches of your life. How I see it is this. When playing someone like Hillbilly, my mistakes are my mistakes. My frustrations are the result of me having fun, learning an engaging, interesting, and fun character. And when I'm challenged by survivors who have a good game sense, even if I'm yelling at the screen, it's all in good fun because the character himself is enjoyable to play. But with the Trapper, you are too reliant on the mistakes of a survivor. You don't win because of your own 9,000 IQ, gigabrain, big dick plays. You win because they got cocky or were stupid and didn't pay attention. So winning doesn't feel good. Playing doesn't feel good. For the gameplay and power of Trapper, I give him a 2.2 out of 5. If you've been missing streams and want to see live gameplay, then go ahead and check out my YouTube channel, The Kaiser VODs, where I upload every game that I play in multi-hour compilations. We also have a collection of short compilations of clips from stream. We'll see you over there. Link is in the description. This section will be the shortest of the bunch. No doubt. Because, in all honesty, I think his perks are well designed. Honestly, this may be the only 5 out of 5 of the bunch, and no, I'm not kidding. Are his perks super powerful? No, but they don't have to be. They fit him, thematically, as a lumbering, muscle-bound killer, and in terms of effects, I have really no issues with them. Agitation is a B-tier perk, best used in Scourge Hook builds and combos incredibly well with Starstruck. Agitation says when you are carrying a survivor, increase your movement speed by 8, 10, or 15%, and increase your terror radius by 12 meters. As my good friend Bran likes to say, match time is gen time, and a perk that allows you to get hooks faster is nothing but beneficial. While this perk is easily replaced with other better perks, I think it's low-key slept on and can be great as a filler perk in really any build. Filler perks, by the way, are perks you put there so you have a 4th perk, but can easily be slotted out for tech perks like Lightborn and Franklin's. Overall, I think Agitation is pretty good, and I like it. Brutal Strength is a staple in pallet shredding and gen kicking builds, allowing you to perform both actions at an increased 10, 15, or 20% speed. This perk can actively help you perform some nasty surprises on survivors. There's a certain muscle memory that survivors gain for how long it takes to break a pallet, and messing with that can mean they gain less distance, have less time to set up a plan, and maybe you can avoid those fucking flashlights for once. I put Brutal in upper B tier, for sure. Finally, we have the weakest of the lot, Unnerving Presence. While survivors are repairing or healing within your terror radius, there is a 10% higher chance of a skill check occurring, and the skill check zone is reduced by 40, 50, or 60%. The reason this is the weakest is because it's only really effective on 2 characters, Doctor, with his impossible skill check build, and Whiskers, or Wesker, as you guys call him, who has the largest terror radius in the game. And even on those two, it still needs to be paired with things like Distressing to increase your terror radius. Although, with the upcoming release of the Unknown and its perk to put your terror radius on Jin, this might see more play. Until then, I think this perk sits in the middle of C tier. If for nothing else, then even with those small zones, you can still pretty constantly hit checks, unless you just aren't paying attention. So, yeah, like I said earlier, the perks aren't groundbreaking or anything, but their design is well done, and I really will give behavior a 5 out of 5 here. Good job, guys. You ever start a project, get to a certain point, and want to just throw your hands up in the air and yell, "Fuck it!" Then take a nap? I did the second half with this section. Where do I even begin? It seems like it'd be easier. Just go down the list from start to finish, talk about each add-on individually and how they tend to pair with other add-ons, a la that one 9-hour Oddstarva video I consumed in one sitting. But then I thought to myself whether or not that would be worth everyone's time, and honestly, whether or not I was going to want to deal with the headache of editing each add-on on screen when I get this video into DaVinci. And originally, like a week ago, when I finished this section, I just had the add-ons I would change, and then left it at that. But I would be disappointed in myself if I left the video in that state, and it seems almost lazy. And for a video where I promised you guys the utmost passion and effort that this type of video deserves, I've decided to do as I said and go over each add-on. So here it goes. Brown add-ons. Bear oil. Setting a bear trap is silent. This is actually not a completely bad add-on, but it's not something I equip often. Or ever. The idea being that you can stop during a loop and set a trap, and the survivor doesn't know that's what you just did. The main issue being that you are massive, and you can be setting the trap pretty easily. But as a brown add-on, it does its job well. If you were doing some sort of challenge where you only use brown add-ons, because you're like a masochist or something, I don't know your life, this would be one of the better browns. Makeshift wrap. Your own bear traps don't stun you when you step in them. If you aren't aware, you can get trapped by your own traps. This is a problem if you are trying to work around a loop you've trapped. The issues with this add-on is the trap is still triggered and closes, and there is this really cheeky strat where you put a trap on the close side of a trash loop, the survivor goes wide to avoid it, and you walk right through it and gain more distance on them faster, but it's a meme strat at best. Still, for a brown add-on, it does its job well. You'll find a pattern with that. Padded Jaws is Trapper's meme add-on. I actually hate that behavior stopped doing this with newer killers down the line. Basically, for a while, every killer had a brown add-on that made your power worse, but gave you more blood points for using the power. Here, the Padded Jaws make it to where survivors aren't injured by traps, but you get 100% more blood points for the trap happening. This is, for all intents and purposes, weak as fuck, but it is really goddamn funny. So, points for that. Trapper Gloves. Set traps 30% faster. Interestingly enough, I'm not a big fan of add-ons that just do numbers. I like the idea of add-ons that can change the way power functions or add bonus effects like status debuffs. Pop Quiz. Do you know the one status effect that exists in only one place in the game and nowhere else? You have 5 seconds. The answer is Deafen. It's on a hag add-on. Anyway, my point is, in the collection of brown add-ons that change the function of the power in some way, silent, doesn't trap you, doesn't injure, seeing an add-on that only adds numbers is kind of disappointing. I wouldn't change it, and I do like the add-on. It has its uses for sure, as the ability to set traps and get your haste faster can make for some good gaps in the haste mechanic. I just think it could have been cooler. Yellow add-ons. 4 Coil Springs. Effects should be lumped in with Wax Brick. All effects that increase escape, rescue, and disarm time should all be in their own family of add-ons. The reasons for this is because 1, Trapper needs all the help he can get, and for 2, it just makes more sense to have one add-on mess with the interactions for traps than a bunch of different ones do the same thing. Instead, I think 4 Coil Springs should make a loud noise notification when the interaction with the trap begins, letting the trapper know someone is disarming the trap. As for if you'd run this add-on at all, I don't recommend it. As an effect, increasing disarm time on its own is kind of pointless if you're close enough to do something with it. Then the extra time doesn't matter, and if you're too far away to do something, then the extra time doesn't matter. Coffee Grounds, an additional 5% haste after setting a bear trap. This gives you a 12.5% haste after a trap gets set, and it's honestly one of the better add-ons. Combine this with something like brown gloves or fastening tools, and you might actually end up being a halfway decent anti-loop, and they are at the next loop already, teabagging under a safe pallet. Well, better luck next time, buddy. Lengthen Jaws. Since in my dream world, Deep Wound is base kit, this effect would instead be that escaping or being rescued from the trap should cause a 5% hinder for 5 seconds. As the current add-on stands, I think Deep Wounds is good for a yellow add-on. It's a good mini slowdown effect that helps give a bit more control. So until the day the devs hire me to fix Trapper, should be any day happening now, I highly recommend this add-on. Serrated Jaws. The hemorrhage effect should be lumped in with rusted jaws and caused both. Separate add-ons that cause hemorrhage and mangled should be done away with game-wide. Every add-on that causes one of these effects should cause the other, especially with that asinine mangled nerf that hit the live servers in the All Things Wicked update by the time you're watching this video. Instead, Serrated Jaws should make healing skill checks when healing that survivor lose the Great Zone for 10 seconds. As it stands now, with the nerf to both hemorrhage and mangled, it is trash. Don't use it. Wax Brick increases the rescue and escape times by 33%. There's nothing to say here. Solid add-on. Good work. I still believe it should include 4 Coil's current effect, but as it stands, it's great. Green add-ons. Fastening Tools should add an increased disarmed timer as well. It's still one of the better add-ons in its current state, but like I said with Wax Brick and 4 Coils, all these effects should be in one add-on. Rusted Jaws. Worthless. Causes mangled, and mangled is too weak to bother with now. It also only causes mangled, so no. Secondary Coils is just like 4 Coils. Its effect should go to Fastening Tools. And like 4 Coils, this extra disarmed timer by itself just isn't worth it for a similar reason. Instead, remember our pop quiz? I think survivors who disarm the trap should be deafened for 10 seconds. Why? Because it's a cool status effect, and I want to see more of it. Tar bottles should be changed to colored gel, and instead camouflage the traps by making them match the color of the map you're on. I know this would be a resolute pain in the ass to code, but surely it's possible. In its current state, this add-on can only fuck with you as some maps are bright, like Cockwind Farms or Eyrie of Cox. Maps that have general brighter color, like Leary's white tint and Toba's vibrant tan, will force the darker traps to stand out. So, just improve the add-on just a bit and make it camouflage over a flat darkened rate. Trapper Bag. In my new system, it would just increase the maximum number of traps by 3. In the current state, increasing your max carrying capacity to 3 and letting you start with 3 is one of the best add-ons and an almost necessity for many trappers. Purple add-ons. Honing Stone. We stand Honing Stone in this house. This is my all-time favorite add-on for the Trapper. I hate that I don't have more. It's just good. It's just fucking good. When a survivor rescues themselves from a trap, which is most of the time the way they get out of traps, they enter the dying state. This effect is so unbelievably good, I'm surprised it's not an iridescent effect. And to be honest, if they exchange this with Eyrie Stone, I would not in the least bit be surprised. Praise and cherish this add-on. Love it, for it is your greatest companion. Oily Coil. It should be 7 seconds of aura reading over 5. While the effect isn't bad per se, I think that disarming a bear trap often happens too far away from you, far too often for you to reasonably do anything about it. And since you don't get haste when a trap is triggered, I think 7 seconds is way better. I really wouldn't run this add-on in its current state or even with an improved 7 seconds because, like I said, you just aren't ever close enough to do anything about it. And before I get comments about it, the rare instances when it happens are not enough to run this add-on. Every time I say something to the effect of, well, this just doesn't happen, you just are never going to be in this situation, people are always quick to point out like the one time that they managed to work a 4K out of a bunch of morons running around in circles in front of them thanks to some rare occurrence. And it should just be obviously stated that just because something happened for you a couple of times doesn't mean that my point in saying it's never going to happen is invalid. It's called hyperbole. Please learn it. Tension Spring. Nothing to say here. It's good. Damn good, actually. A trap will reset itself 2 seconds after a survivor escapes from it. And I am reminded of this one time early in my Dead by Daylight journey when I had this paired with Honestone, and I watched from a distance as all 4 survivors went down to the same trap because they kept going in for the pickup only to get caught in the trap, escape, enter the dying state, and it reset itself for the next survivor. I only wish I had been streaming at the time because that clip would have never died. Trapper Sack, the most necessary add-on of the bunch. You start with all 10 traps from the beginning is insane for removing a good portion of the sluggish start for the Trapper. In my new system, I would increase the max trap count by 3, and its original effect of making it to where you can't move your traps once you place them is dumb and needs to be removed regardless. Eyrie add-ons. Bloody Coil, another fantastic add-on in a line of moderately good to amazing add-ons. When a survivor disarms a trap, they are injured. No notes, perfect as is. And finally, the iridescent stone. Like I said before, this being eerie while Honestone is purple is wild to me because this is the clearly weaker effect. Every 30 seconds, a closed trap gets set. This can be kind of funny with coffee grounds, but what confuses me is this doesn't trigger your base kit haste. So you can't run this and then have a trap set across the map and get random funny speed boosts, which is bad and it should function that way. But to be honest, I don't run this that much because traps just do not spawn in useful spots. So having them randomly set themselves isn't useful. The more I think about this, actually, the more I'm ready to call it a bad add-on. Yeah, this is a bad add-on. In Trapper's current state, anyway. If in my reworked world, it'd be great. If I were to only change this, though, I'd make it to where the traps are 30% bigger. That'd be a really good effect and make it harder for survivors to dodge traps. Overall, add-on design gets a 3.9 out of 5. I am hesitant to give it a full 4 or higher because while it's generally good add-on design, things like the effects that should be combined with each other and completely useless add-ons make this add-on set kind of like that one hamburger joint you really like, except for the fact that the waiter you always seem to get talks just a tad too much and doesn't let you enjoy your meal. It's still a good burger, still good music and cool atmosphere, but God, this dude needs to shut up.
It is currently 5 o'clock in the morning. I have not been to bed yet. However, because of insomnia, I cannot sleep. Did you know that with the release of The Unknown, there are 118 killer perks in this fucking game? So, I do not want to waste too much time, so I'm going to go ahead and go through each of these perks and see how good they are on Trapper specifically, right? So if I mark a perk as being good on Trapper, it does not necessarily mean that the perk is good in general. It just means that it works well with Trapper. And just because I mark a perk as being bad on Trapper doesn't mean that the perk is bad in general. It just means that it's bad on Trapper. Now that we've cleared that up, let's get started and see if we can get this section of the video done in under an hour. Okay. Bitter Murmur. Bitter Murmur is a perk that allows you to see the aura of survivors within a certain meter radius after a generator is completed, and then after all the generators are completed, you're able to see the auras of all survivors. This is a D tier. Normally, I rank info perks way higher, but for Trapper, the biggest problem with him is just how slow he is. He has no map traversal. He has no map presence, really, except for his traps and hoping that they are in the correct spot. So, unfortunately, a lot of information perks that only give you not only, but a lot of information perks that give you information on players that might be far across the map, it's just not that great. And a lot of them are probably going to end up in this D tier, and there's a reason for that. Deerstalker. Actually, I'd probably put Deerstalker at C. Only because you do have the Honestone add-on, which I talked about in the last section, and you can, if somebody hits a trap across the map and they fall down, they might crawl away. So Deerstalker can actually be kind of decent if you plan on running the Honestone add-on. I wouldn't recommend it as being something. I just want to let you guys know the S tier are ones that I recommend every game. Like if you can run them every game, I recommend them every game. But yeah, that's basically it. Distressing really doesn't get a lot of use as a perk in general unless you're combining it with other Terror Radius perks. And on Trapper, I really wouldn't use it at all. Just because, like I said, Trapper is very slow, he's very clunky, and you really don't want the survivors to know where you are if you can help it. So increasing your Terror Radius doesn't help you at all. Noed is an A tier perk on Trapper. Because Trapper is so slow to start everything, and because it's so very difficult for him to get any value out of his power, you're going to be losing all 5 gens a lot. So Noed, you just really can't go wrong. If you want to, fucking trap every totem that you come across, just in case the end game comes and it makes him harder to cleanse Noed. I don't know, you do you, but Noed's just really good on Trapper just because he's just way too slow to really make an impact in the early game. There's a good chance you can lose the mid game, so if you want to really secure those kills, definitely go with Noed.
Thrill of the Hunt. I knew this thing had hunt in it somewhere. Thrill of the Hunt is just it's not good. Very very rarely, if at all, are you going to be running hex perks on Trapper. I know that's ironic given the fact that I just told you to run fucking Noed, but listen to me. You're not going to be running many hex perks on Trapper because he simply does not have the ability to defend hex totems that well. So it's very important that you understand that you're not going to be doing that. Insidious is a meme perk, and it always has been. It's not really that great on Trapper. If you want to run Basement Trapper, maybe you could like stand in a corner and wait for someone to step in a trap. But realistically speaking, we'll put it in D just because it works with Basement Trapper, I guess, and really nothing else. Iron Grasp is very good on Trapper. Much like before, Trapper is just very slow. So when he gets a down, he gets a kill. He needs to be able to secure that hook. You know what I mean? He needs to be able to secure the hook as best as possible, and Iron Grasp helps him do that. So I'm definitely going to give that an A tier. Next up, we have Monstrous Shrine, and some people might think I'm kind of crazy for this, but it's kind of like Insidious, except better. If you want to go with a Basement Trapper build, you could definitely run Monstrous Shrine just because of the fact that it gives you 4 Scourge hooks in the basement. So you want to run a Trapper build and you want to put Scourge hooks on there, you could definitely do that. Do I recommend you run Monstrous Shrine? No, not at all. But it is viable on Basement Trapper, so there's that. Shattered Hope is just an F tier perk all around. Of all the times I'm going to do any of these videos, I will never once recommend to you Shattered Hope. So don't expect it. And when I do the killer tier list, and I don't know, probably a couple days after filming this, I'll be honest with you, it'd be kind of cool to do a killer perk tier list after the unknown. You guys actually might see that tier list before you see this video, because this video just is taking so long to do. But you get my point. It's a bad perk, just don't use it. After the nerfs, Sloppy is no longer viable on Trapper. I really don't know how viable it is on anything, to be honest with you. It still provides its slowdown in some capacity, but we'll put it above Monstrous Shrine and Deerstalker. But I really just don't use it, man. It's just better to find other slowdowns than it is to run this perk, man. This nerf has just pissed me off so bad. Spies is very similar to Bitter Murmur. Just because you get that information doesn't mean you can act on it, and the acting on that information is what's important. So no, I just really wouldn't. Unrelenting actually isn't too bad on Trapper because Trapper is an M1 killer. And because it's very easy to juke M1 killers, especially when they have, nothing for them. It's one of those perks that, maybe you want to throw on if you find yourself whiffing a lot, if you find yourself having trouble. Definitely. Whispers is... I watched Otts recommend this for like a basic build on Trapper. Look, man, I just don't like Whispers, man. I understand the point of it on Trapper. It's to be like, need to know where, fuck, I can't talk right now. If you need to know if somebody's watching you place a trap, then, go for it. But I really don't think it's that big of a deal. And I wouldn't really use it, to be honest with you. It's bottom of D for right now. Agitation's very similar to Iron Grasp. Trapper needs to be able to confirm the hooks on the downs that he does get, because it can be very hard for him to get them. So making sure that you get those people on the hook, very, very good. Very good perk on him. Brutal Strength is another very good perk on him. I would actually put Brutal Strength above Iron Grasp and Agitation, just because as an M1 killer, as a pure M1 killer, pallets are your worst enemy. And, this is just, get rid of that pallet, get back into the fight. Very, very good. Unnerving Presence only works in Terror Radius builds, and I don't really think that it is a perk that belongs in Trapper himself, just because very, very often you're not going to be getting much use out of it, because you're not running Terror Radius builds on Trapper. You want, like I said, you want people to not know you're there. You need every advantage you can get. So next up is... Jesus Christ. These three from Wraith are just all F tier. Shadowborn, Predator, and Bloodhound are just all dog shit perks in general. Just don't use them at all. I really shouldn't need to explain. This is crap because you can see blood stains
And if you can't turn your gamma up, this is crap because it just makes scratch marks closer together, which helps nothing. It does. In fact, it can actually confuse you more than it can help you. And Shadowborn, after its rework, has just become a useless perk. The haste after getting blinded just doesn't work. I talked about this in a video dedicated to Shadowborn. No. Enduring, very similar to Brutal Strength. Enduring is very good for you because as an M1 killer, again, your biggest weakness is pallets. And so being able to recover from stuns very quickly means that you can get back into trying to mind game and loop and other things like that. So I definitely put that up here. I'm going to put it below Iron Grasp and Agitation though, because I just don't think that it's as useful on its own. Like I wouldn't run this by itself in the build. I'd combined it with the upcoming Spirit Fury, which is somewhere down here. Lightborn is a really good perk for Trapper. If you see flashlights in the beginning lobby, let me explain. If you see flashlights, at least 2 in the beginning lobby, you can put on Lightborn, and I highly recommend it. If you do not see flashlights, or you only see 1, leave it alone. And the reason I recommend it is for the exact same reason I recommend Iron Grasp and Agitation. You need to confirm your hooks. So if you see 2 flashlights in the lobby, then maybe you want to be careful about that. And this also helps with people stunning you and then instantly flashlighting you in order to discombobulate you. Plus, it'll give you a nice aura reading on people who are actually nearby when they try to blind you. So that's really good. Tinkerer is one of those perks that you just don't have the map presence to use very well. While I keep saying over and over again that your best bet is to not have bigger terror radiuses, Tinkerer is just one of those perks that you just don't have the ability to use incredibly well. And it's because of that, I just really wouldn't recommend running it because you just don't have the map presence to take advantage of it. So Nurse's Calling is one of those perks where within a certain meter radius, you can see people healing, which is great. Because Trapper isn't that fast, he can't move to take advantage of it. It's one of those things that really only belongs on killers who are either undetectable a lot or very fast. So killers like Blight, Nurse, Billy, etc., can use it really well. And then killers like Ghostface, Wraith, they can use it very well. It's just one of those perks that Trapper can't take advantage of. It's not that it's a bad perk. It's just not a good perk on him, but I will put it, a little bit higher in the D list. Strider is one of the most worthless perks of all time. If the thing is that if you have good hearing, I could recommend Strider because it can help you with your mind games. I'm half deaf. That's why Strider just doesn't really do anything for me. I don't know if I'd put it in the B though. I mean, yeah, I guess I could put it in the B for the same reason I put Unrelenting in the B. If you're just having trouble keeping track of injured survivors during mind games, then it's good. And on somebody like Trapper, you need every advantage you can get in the mind game. Thana is one of the most useless perks in existence. Don't ever use Thana. Ever, ever, ever. Fuck Thana. Fuck it to hell. Dying Light is another one of those perks that just isn't good. It might seem good to a lot of people to provide like adequate slowdown on generators, but I don't think that it's enough slowdown to actually help you as the Trapper. So I would definitely just kind of avoid Dying Light if possible, but I could understand why you might want to use it. Play with Your Food is actually a really good perk on Trapper. It's one of those perks. It boosts your speed every time you chase the obsession, but you don't hit them. So you chase the obsession and then you lose them, and then it gives you a stack. And every stack you get up to 3, so every stack you get like extra speed, and so that's really good for an M1 killer like Trapper to just have that really good haste effect to allow you to catch up to survivors faster. So yeah, I think it's really good. Save the Best for Last is going to be in the S tier. This is one of those perks where I highly recommend it. If you can run Save the Best for Last, run Save the Best for Last. Every hit you land, you get a token. Every token up to a maximum of 8, you get a certain percentage off of your swing cooldown. That means when you hit a survivor, the wipe animation happens faster. And so with somebody like Trapper, who is a pure M1 killer, this is great. Now, when you hit the obsession, you lose 2 stacks, but the thing about that is that when it comes to something like Save the Best for Last, do not be afraid to lose stacks.
if you're going to hit the obsession. Just hit the fucking obsession and keep moving. Okay? The point is that this is a bonus that the Trapper desperately needs, and it's really good. Devour Hope is a Hex Totem. I'm going to put it in the C tier because Devour Hope is a good perk, but it's still a Hex, and you don't defend Hexes that well. Now, the exception to that Hex rule is actually Ruin. I'm going to put Ruin in the B tier because Trapper does not have the time to go around kicking gens. And if you are short on passive gen regressions, like for example Pain Resonance, then it's really good to be able to equip Ruin onto Trapper because you're going to be chasing people off gens and you want to commit to that chase. So as long as they're not working on the gens, it's regressing. This is probably, this one and Noed are probably going to be the only Hex perks I recommend. I don't know. I'll figure out when I get to them. But yeah, really good. I really like it. Third Seal is not at all useful on Trapper, although I will put it a slightly higher on the list. I'm actually going to move Distressing down a bit and move Spies up. Yeah, something like that probably. Third Seal is good because every time you injure survivors, you blind them, which helps you counter things like windows. And if you hook a survivor far away, then it can help kind of counter them going for the save. It's just not a good perk on Trapper because you're not injuring a lot of people in rapid succession. You're not a hit and run killer. You're a dedicated zoning control killer. So I wouldn't really recommend running it, but you know, it's in the F tier. So yeah. Monitor is actually, I'm going to go ahead and put it in the B tier. While you're not in chase, your terror radius is reduced. This is part of that all-important getting the jump on survivors if you can. I really like the idea of reducing Trapper's terror radius because he needs so many advantages. Because he needs to get, you know, ahead of people in chases. I really like the fact that you can reduce your terror radius to kind of catch them off guard so that you can get closer to them to land that all-important hit that's going to help you along the way. Overcharge is a gen kicking perk, and I don't recommend gen kicking perks on Trapper. I will put them in the B tier because it is a halfway decent slowdown perk. However, with Trapper, you can't afford to waste more time kicking gens. So I wouldn't use Overcharge on Trapper, but if you're going to, you know, I wouldn't blame you. I forget what this perk is called, but I remember what it does. It's a doctor perk, and it increases the rate at which survivors use items in your terror radius. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to put that here down in F tier. Don't use this on Trapper, okay? I really don't know if I'd recommend using it ever, but don't use it on Trapper. Then we have, this is the one that while you're bloodlusted, you gain undetectable. This is crap. It's actually pretty heavily crap. It's crap below even Predator and Bloodhound. If you're bloodlusted, you don't need undetectable. It's not going to do anything for you. Huntress's Lullaby is one of those perks that just kind of belongs in the F tier overall and in general. It only really sees play on one build, which is Skill Check Doctor. You just really don't need to be using it because you don't care. You might think, oh, it's passive slowdown because they might get caught off guard, but you can't protect hexes. And so no, it's not. Territorial Imperative, even with the Invocation perk being released, this still isn't a good perk. I don't know why people think it is. Again, by the time you see this video, I might have already made a video on this. I don't know yet. I'm filming this like 4 days before the All Things Wicked even releases, so I'm just going to go ahead and throw this in F tier as well. It's just a really bad perk in general. Barbecue and Chili is one of those perks where we're going to put in the D tier, but we're going to put it kind of high in the D tier. And the reason is very similar to Bitter Murmur. It's because you just can't take advantage of that aura reading. The aura reading happens 40 meters outside of the hook state. So while it can give you an idea of maybe where you want to head next, you just don't move fast enough to take full advantage of it. Franklin's goes up here with Lightborn. If you see survivors running medkits or toolboxes, bring Franklin's with you. It's just a really good advantage to be able to reduce their efficiency. And so I would just highly, highly, highly recommend bringing Franklin's with you. Now, Knockout's a very interesting perk in my opinion because you're not a slugging killer. However, I would not blame you for running Knockout because being able to slug the survivors so that you can go and take advantage of getting as much pressure as you can on the map as possible is really good. And the fact that it hides the aura of the down survivor is effectively one of your best tools, but it's just right on the edge of not being useful enough to run. Blood Warden belongs in Endgame Trapper. Endgame Trapper is the second weakest Trapper right below Basement Trapper. So I'll put it in the middle of the C tier for now. I just don't expect you'll get a lot of use out of it. So I'd be very careful with it. I'm actually thinking about making it D tier, to be honest with you, because there's just better stuff to go in your endgame build. Fire Up is a surprisingly underrated perk on Trapper because you're going to be losing gens at such a fast rate because you take so long to get your entire game started. Fire Up is one of those perks that allows you to get that extra oomph throughout your game. I'm actually, to be real with you, I think I want to put it in A tier, like over here, because it's just it gives you the same power as Brutal Strength. And also it's a really good in-game part of in-game Trapper build. So Fire Up, low-key underrated on Trapper. Remember Me is another in-game Trapper perk that I think is low-key underrated. I would like to put it here, however, just because you are forcing the exit gates to take longer to open doesn't necessarily mean that you can take advantage of that, which is why this isn't going into the A tier, because it's very similar to a lot of the other map-wide effect perks. You have enough map presence for it to matter. But I do like it. I do like the idea of running it. Make Your Choice is going to go into the F tier, top of the F tier. This is a perk that you just can't take advantage of. You have to be 32 meters away from the hook, I believe. It's a very long range, and whenever the person unhooks, they are exposed. The expose is great, but you just simply can't cross that distance fast enough in order to take full advantage of their expose, so I don't really recommend it. Hangman's Trick is the second worst perk in the game. Just don't use it. I'm not going to explain why. Just don't fucking use it. Surveillance is an information perk that you can take advantage of. So I'm going to put it at the bottom of the C tier. Basically, whenever you kick a gen, it turns yellow and then becomes white, or turns white and then becomes yellow when it stops regressing. It's one of those two. And you can sometimes take advantage of this because, like, if you kick a gen or a gen starts regressing, let's say you pain res, you see a gen off in the distance, start regressing. You're like, okay, got it. That's regressing. That's where they are. You start heading that way, and then you see it change color, and you're like, they're on that gen now. You have a little bit more information. Bamboozle, highly underrated perk on Trapper. I'm gonna put it right above Brutal Strength. This perk is really fucking good because you can already cut the power of loops in half with your traps. So, like, if you're chasing someone around Shack and you place a trap at, say, the corner of Shack, and then you go and you bamboozle the window, you've cut the power of Shack down to a very small percentage. And that is very, very good and very, very useful. And I highly, highly, highly recommend using Bamboozle if you can. Corlophobia is another Terror Radius trap, so it's going to go right over here with the rest of the Terror Radius perks. Pop Goes the Weasel, very similar to Overcharge. You can use Pop, but I don't recommend it because I do not think that wasting time kicking gens on Trapper is worth it. I think that if you waste time kicking gens, it's one of those things that's just not that fucking great. You know what I mean? You waste so much time getting ready in the beginning of the game, and then you waste more time kicking gens. It just doesn't do anything for you. You can use it. I definitely put it over Overcharge. And honestly, I'd probably put Unrelenting down here along with Strider, but I wouldn't necessarily do it. You know what I mean? Haunted Grounds I'm going to put this as an underrated perk on
Trapper. Because you can't protect hex totems too well, it's kind of cool to have this little surprise for the survivors. 45 seconds of exposed is actually a lot longer than you think, and the fact that you'll normally be right on survivors' trails whenever one of these things is going to get cleansed means that you can probably get you a nice, really good surprise. I would actually put it above Lightborn and Franklin's. The reason Lightborn and Franklin's are in the A tier is because they give you a very solid advantage as an M1 killer, but they're only useful in the niche situations where you see the survivors actually have things, you know, flashlights and medkits / toolboxes respectively. Rancor is a silly little meme perk, but we're not ranking things off of how fun they are to use. We're ranking them off of effectiveness. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put Rancor at the bottom of the D tier. You can use it. You can use the information from it, but not really. It's kind of neato to just like suddenly kill the obsession in the end game, but it just barely stays out of F tier. F tier is never used, by the way. These are never used perks on Trapper. If something goes in the F tier, never use them. Next up, we have Spirit Fury, which is always going to be paired with Enduring, but if you don't want to pair it with Enduring for some weird reason, I still highly recommend it because it is one of those counter palette perks. You pair this with Enduring and Brutal Strength and probably Bamboozle, and you've got yourself a really solid build that helps you shut down loop, that helps you weaken loops in combination with your power. I'm really surprised I don't see more trappers running Spirit Fury, but I really, really like it. The reason it's so high up on this list is because it is good on its own. You can use it on its own to be very, very good. Next up is Discordance. This is another information perk that you're just not able to utilize the full potential of. So it's going to go down here right above Rancor. You can use it so that you know where to go. Actually, you know what? I think I would probably end up putting this right below Tinkerer instead. It's actually one of those perks, like I said, you can use it to know where to go, but I don't really recommend it. It shows you gens that are being worked on by 2 or more survivors, so that's cool. But it's just something that I wouldn't really use because you just don't have the map presence for it. Iron Maiden, unironically, is really funny. And also it's one of those perks that I'm finding myself, like, as I think about it, I'm finding myself kind of recommending it a little bit more because not recommending it, but putting it in this D tier area. Cause this is, if the F tier is perks that I would, here, let me fix this real quick. So this is a lot better explanation of what I'm trying to do with these tiers. We have the always use, which is you should never take these off unless you're trying not to win. We have the highly recommended, which is perks that are just there to honestly help give you the advantages that you need. We have the recommend, which are perks that I would use if you're trying to have a good time, but also still not be too weak. We have the could use, where you could theoretically use them, but they're not like ones that I would, you know, fully say you should use. We have the don't use if you don't have to, which is basically you use them if you like, you don't really have anything else to put in that slot. And then we have the never use, which is just do not touch. I should never see any of these on a trapper ever. Right. Mad Grit is a backpack build perk. I'm going to put this in the could use category, right below Sloppy. You could theoretically have this in our minds, right? In our minds, we're putting this up here with Iron Grasp and Agitation as a perk to actually. I'm going to put this at the top of the recommended. Well, right below these two, I think, actually. Because it's just like Iron Grasp and Agitation, where it theoretically helps you get to the hook faster. However, the biggest problem with it, at least in my opinion, is that it's only one of those help me get to hook better perks if people are trying to body block. So if you find you're having a lot of trouble with people body blocking, then sure, use it. If you don't, then don't use it. Sound good? Okay. Corrupt. Now this is, I'm going to get so much shit for this. I don't like Corrupt. I've never found Corrupt to be useful in my entire life. I've tried using it on Myers. I've tried using it on Trapper. It does not provide the slowdown people say it does. But I'm not going to completely ignore everyone. I'm going to put it at the bottom of recommended. It's just barely not going in could use because it just doesn't do what people say it says it does. So
That's just me. Dark Devotion is a perk that I will put kind of high in the recommended, actually, probably right below Knockout. Whenever you hit the obsession, your terror radius transfers to them and you become undetectable. And we all know how good undetectable can be for trappers. So you down the obsession, you hook them, and then you are undetectable for a little bit so you can get the jump on another survivor that is hopefully nearby. Next, we have Infectious Fright. This is going to go in the could use category right below Sloppy Butcher. Whenever you down a survivor, all the other survivors within your terror radius scream and reveal their location. So this helps you know if there are any flashlight users around or if somebody is hovering nearby for like a save or something like that. And you would think this might make its way into the recommended, but it doesn't, because at the end of the day, it's just one of those things that there's just so many better options that go in this perk slot. And so, you could use it, but I don't recommend it. Furtive Chase is another one of those perks that's kind of gonna go in the recommended, but very hesitantly. Like it's just barely missing out on could use. Whenever you hook the obsession, you gain haste and you're undetectable, and that undetectable is just so strong on Trapper because, like I said, it just helps you. It helps you so much be able to get the jump and get that early hit on survivors who just aren't expecting you to be there. It's so useful for getting there, but the limits of the undetectable are so stringent that I can't fully highly recommend it or anything. Next up is I'm All Ears. I'm going to put this in the highly recommended section. Actually kind of high, probably over here. Do I put it above Brutal? I think I put it in between Brutal and Spirit Fury. So I'm All Ears triggers whenever a survivor does a rush action. You see their aura for 10 seconds, I believe. And so the really good thing about this is it helps you with your mind game. It helps you with your anti-loop. It works really well with your power because you're cutting the power of loops in half with it, or with you're cutting the power of loops in half with your traps. And then on top of that, when they vault a window or something, you see where they're at. So it helps you win the mind game more easily. I think overall, honestly, in general, I'm All Ears is a very underrated perk. Next up is Thrilling Tremors. This is more of that passive slowdown. I'm honestly going to put this in the could use category. I don't really think that it's a recommended perk. Whenever you pick up a survivor, all generators are blocked for, I think, a maximum of 16 seconds. All generators that aren't being worked on. So it's technically information to show you which generators are being worked on when you pick up a survivor. But just like a lot of the other perks, you just don't get to take advantage of it. The only reason I recommend this is because, like I said, it falls into that passive slowdown category where, you just kind of not recommend it. The only reason it's in the could use is because it just kind of falls into that passive slowdown category that Trapper just so desperately needs, it's just not fully worth it. Claustrophobia is actually, I think Corrupt. No. I'm going to put it in could use. I'm going to put it in could use. Whenever a generator is completed, all vault locations across the map are blocked for an X amount of seconds, which is a really funny buff that it received back in the day that I always found amusing. But it helps with that anti-loop. The only problem is that it requires you to be losing the game to help with that anti-loop. So I don't think it's the best, but it is kind of funny, and I think it's kind of neato. So definitely, if you don't have any other options, give it a try. Next up is Fearmonger. Actually, it's called Mindbreaker now, I believe. This also has a different name. I just don't remember what it is. But Mindbreaker, whenever a survivor is working on a gen, they are blinded and exhausted for 5 seconds until they get off the gen. So they're blinded and exhausted indefinitely, and then when they get off the gen, it extends another 5 seconds. Exhaustion perks. You know what? I actually will recommend this. I will recommend this. The reason it's not highly recommended is because you're running it in case you run into exhaustion perks, but it is not guaranteed that you will run into exhaustion perks. However, Sprint Burst and Lithe are two of your biggest enemies as Trapper because of how ungodly slow you are and the fact you're an M1 killer. So because of that, I don't think this is a bad idea. I just don't like the idea of running a perk in case you run into other perks. So that's why it's sitting below highly recommended, but at the top of recommended. Surge is your passive slowdown. This is the passive slowdown perk for Trapper. Whenever you down a survivor with an M1, all generators within 24 meters, 24, 32, one of those two, all generators within a certain meter radius explode for 10%, 10 to 12%, something like that. So being able to knock that off while you're doing your M1 thing is just perfect. This is one of the staple M1 killer perks, and it's no different on Trapper. Blood Echo is kind of crap. Whenever you hook a survivor, all injured survivors are exhausted. Honestly, I would put this in the could use category. I don't know if necessarily it's the best. Mindbreaker's a lot better because you're typically going to be chasing people off of gens, and that's when they're going to want to use their sprint burst and stuff. Whereas this one, you're not really going to get that opportunity that often, and it relies on people being injured. I'm actually going to put it below claustrophobia because it just relies on people already being injured to make them exhausted, which is kind of bad. Next up is Nemesis. Whenever you get stunned, the person who stuns you becomes your obsession, and whenever a survivor becomes the obsession, you get aura reading on them. This is one of those perks that can theoretically be used as a form of anti-loop. However, if the person you're chasing is already the obsession, then it's not going to help you. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put this above claustrophobia in the could use because theoretically you could get a lot of use out of it, but you're not necessarily going to. Ascension's Tactics is shit. I'm going to put it down here in the shit category where it belongs. You are going to get no benefit from knowing where the pallets and window vaults are. You already know where the pallets and window vaults are because you are the killer. So if a pallet is broken, you fucking broke it. Moving on. DMS is in that passive category. We're going to go ahead and put DMS up here in the highly recommended. Whenever you hook a survivor, any survivors that get off of a gen during a 30-second time window will have that gen blocked for the duration of that 30-second time window. So you hook a survivor and you go to chase another survivor off a gen 5 seconds later, then for another 25 seconds that generator is blocked and they're no longer able to interact with it. This also has the added benefit of if two survivors are working on a generator, one gets off to go for a save, DMS will still kick in and kick the other survivor off of that generator. So it's pretty decent passive slowdown. I kind of like it. It's just not, it's not something that I would run personally in my builds, but I do highly recommend it if you can. Gearhead is another one of those information perks that you just don't really get a lot of use out of. I'm going to go ahead and put it at the top of don't use if you don't have to. Just because very similar to Tinkerers, it's one of those perks where, yes, cool, you could maybe get use out of it if you're close enough, but realistically speaking, you're just not really going to be close enough that often. And most of the time, Gearhead triggers while you're in chase, so why would you ever leave your chase to go to another generator? Next up is Retribution. Whenever a totem is cleansed, all survivors are oblivious and you see their aura. I forget the exact times, but this is another one of those perks where it's just like, yeah, you see all of their auras, but I mean, you can't do anything about it. So I will put it slightly above Bitter Murmur because it's one of those hex traps, and survivors are like survivors see a hex and their little monkey brains start firing neurons and they go must cleanse, must cleanse, must cleanse. So yeah. Deathbound is a really fucking weird perk. Whenever a survivor finishes healing another one, they scream and then they're oblivious. It's one of those perks you can't really take that much advantage of. I'm honestly going to put it on the bottom of don't use if you don't have to. It's almost one of those perks you should never use, to be real with you. Actually, to be honest with you, it belongs in never use because I put make your choice in never use. Never use Deathbound. Forced Penance. Whenever you interrupt a heal, one of the survivors becomes broken. I think it's the one that was doing the healing. This seems decent enough, but you're realistically not going to be interrupting heals that often. So I'm going to put it right above Nurse's Calling, but you're just not going to be using it that often. Trail of Torment is another one of those gen kicking perks. While it does theoretically give you,
undetectable. It's only until the gen stops regressing, which makes it not as good as one of the new unknown perks that we'll get to a little bit later. So this is just definitely a perk that I wouldn't really worry about using. I'm gonna put it in the don't use if you don't have to. We'll put it above Insidious, but below Dying Light, I think. Next up is Dragon's Grip. After you kick a gen, it gets marked. If any survivor touches that gen within the next, I think, 30 seconds, they scream and they become exposed. You should not be kicking gens. So once again, we're going to go ahead and put this right here in the don't use if you don't have to. We'll put it right below Bitter Murmur and move on with our lives. Hex Blood Favor. This is actually one I would probably recommend. We'll go ahead and put it above the gen kicking perks, actually. Right below the... no, actually, it could go pretty high. I think it actually can go very high. Right below Play With Your Food and right below Ruin. So it's a hex perk, which means that you're not going to be able to defend it very well because you are the Trapper. But whenever you do land that shot on a survivor, they can't drop pallets, improving your anti-loop. And... yeah, just really, really good. I do recommend it. I think it's a really good perk for him. So yeah, for sure. Next up is Undying. This is just there to protect your perks. It's got some stupid aura reading effect when they're near dull totems, but realistically, because you're not going to be running perks that much on the Trapper, it's going to go in the in the never use. Even if you're running a hex build, most of the hexes I've recommended, like Haunted Grounds, you want them to clear anyway. You know what? Maybe I could put it... I think I'll put it in the could use, actually. The more I think about it, the more it's like, you know what? If you're going to use a hex build, maybe this isn't such a bad idea. So we'll put it there for now. Next up is Coup de Grace. Coup de Grace is going to go right above Fire Up. Whenever a survivor completes a generator, you get 2 tokens, and each of those tokens extend a lunge by 80%. As an M1 killer, it's one of those perks that's just really fucking good. You can hit survivors at windows you normally wouldn't be able to. You can catch survivors before they get to loops that you normally wouldn't be able to. It's just a really, really good perk for M1 killers. You know what? It just... highly recommend it. Next up is Hoarders. Hoarders is crap. You're never going to be able to take advantage of the information it might give you, and survivors don't go in chests anyway, so we'll put that down there. Next up is Oppression. This is one of those gen kicking builds. Now, I put this slightly above other gen kicking builds in the list, because when you kick a gen, it damages 3 others, or 2 others, I believe. 3 others. And so that's really good. If someone's working on the gen that you kick, if someone's working on one of the gens that gets the damage proc, they actually get a difficult skill check. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to put this above the other gen kick. Well, we'll put it below Pop. I think Pop is better than Oppression, but Oppression is better than Overcharge. You still shouldn't be kicking gens, by the way. Just remember that. Next up is Crowd Control. It's a hex. Whenever a survivor leaps through a window, that window gets blocked. This is theoretically really good, and it goes right next to Blood Favor, I believe, in the recommended category because it's just such a good anti-loop perk. But again, it is a hex, and you can't protect hexes as Trapper, so don't be surprised if it doesn't work out that well for you. Next up is No Way Out. This is going to go in the highly recommended category, actually probably pretty far. Probably right under NOED. Every time you hook a survivor for the first time, you get a token, up to 4 tokens, and with all 4 tokens, whenever they go to work on the exit gates get blocked for up to a minute. That gives you up to an extra full minute of time to try to bring the game back, and since you're the Trapper and you'll be making it to the end game a lot, this is one of those in-game perks that you definitely should put in your in-game build for Trapper. Next up is Starstruck. Starstruck is actually going to go right here below Mad Grit. Actually above Mad Grit, I think. This is another one of those perks where if you find yourself getting body blocked a lot, you want to use it. While you're carrying a survivor, every survivor in your terror radius is exposed. And then that exposed lingers for 30 seconds after they leave your terror radius or after you put the survivor down.
So if you're finding yourself having trouble getting survivors to hooks because you keep getting body blocked, this is one of those perks that's really good. This is also good in something like the end game where you pick up the survivor and then the other survivors around you get exposed. And then when you hook that survivor, the other survivors have to wait 60 seconds before going for, or sorry, 30 seconds before going for a rescue, which is a lot of time. That is half the time it takes for a hook state to go down. So you can waste a lot of time with this perk. Eruption, you shouldn't be kicking gens. You can't get the benefits from the aura reading. But whenever you do down a survivor, it explodes the gen for 25%. So I'll put it down here right above Corrupt Intervention. Next up is Hysteria. I think this is whenever you injure a survivor, they become oblivious? Question mark. I don't really recommend this perk. There's not, I don't know how to explain it, but it's just not that great. So I'll put this in the don't use if you don't have to. It's not so bad that I would never use it, but it's not really that good either. Lethal Pursuer, you might actually be surprised to hear, but I recommend Lethal Pursuer. And I think this is actually going to go right below Corrupt because this will allow you to see where the survivors are, or actually no. You don't, if you're using Purple Bag, if you're using the Trapper Sack add-on, which is purple, then yes, use this. But if you're not, then don't. Because you need time to set up, and that early game knowledge is not useful to you. So I'm going to put this in the could use at the top of the could use category, because it's dependent on what add-on you're running. Otherwise, I wouldn't. Deadlock is going to go in the always use category. Although it will definitely go in the bottom of the always use category, it's one of those perks that whenever, it's one of those passive slowdown perks. So whenever a generator is completed, the generator on the map with the highest progress gets blocked for 40 seconds, 30 seconds, one of those two. And the big thing about that is that allows them to, that it kind of slows down gen rushing. The problem with this perk, and honestly why I'm almost tempted to drop it down to highly recommended, is that if you're chasing one survivor and all three of the other survivors are on 3 separate gens, you still might end up getting back-to-back pops, right? Because the first gen pops, it blocks one of the 2 other gens with the highest progress, but the third gen isn't getting blocked, and that might be close to being finished anyway. And it can feel really bad when that happens to you. So I'm almost tempted to put it in highly recommended, but we'll keep it in always use because it is one of those perks that's just like, you really shouldn't go without it on Trapper. Next up is Plaything. Hook a survivor for the first time. A totem lights up, and they're oblivious while that totem is lit. It's a hex totem. You can't defend hex totems, but I would be lying to you if I said that all the survivors being oblivious to you is not a good thing. So we're gonna put it right above Dark Devotion in the recommended category. Scourge Hook, Gift of Pain. Whenever you hook a survivor on a Scourge Hook, they are hemorrhaged and mangled, and once they get healed, they repair generators slower. This goes with Sloppy Butcher. Where is Sloppy at? It goes right below Sloppy Butcher because Hemorrhaged and Mangled is severely nerfed, and so it's not as good. There's not as much of a rush for them to heal, so they can take the time while they're waiting for Mangled and Hemorrhage to go away to just work on a generator, so that slowdown doesn't give you as much pressure anymore. So that's why that's in the could use, but I wouldn't recommend it. Next up is Grim Embrace. Grim Embrace is going to go in the highly recommended. Where at in the high? I think above DMS. Probably actually above Fire Up. Above Fire Up, right below Coup. Whenever you hook a survivor for the first time, all generators are blocked for 16 seconds. Once you move all generators are blocked for 15 seconds. Once you move 16 meters away from the hook, something like that. And then once you hook the 4th survivor, all generators are blocked for like 40 seconds or something like that. It's insane. This is a perk that is just really good passive slowdown overall. My only problem with this perk is that if you're not a killer who can get a lot of use out of the time that the generators are blocked, like Hillbilly, Nurse, Blight, etc., then you struggle a lot with this. So I highly recommend this because it's just the most powerful slowdown or passive slowdown in the game right now. But something that it's not something that I would use over everything else that's above it, if you know what I mean. Next up is Hex Pentimento. You're not going to be running Hex builds that often. Don't use it if you don't have to, but it's probably the strongest. Don't use it if you don't have to. Next up is Pain Resonance. Pain Resonance is the second most powerful passive slowdown in the game. But for Trapper himself, I would put it above everything else. I'm probably thinking, I think I might put it above, honestly, yeah. It goes above No Way Out. So you just, whenever you hook somebody on a Scourge hook, the gen with the highest progress blows up for 25%. This happens the first time you hook each survivor. So you get a total of 4 procs. And because it happens across the map, no matter what, it's just really good for you because it gives you some much needed map pressure that you didn't have before. Call of Brine is another gen kicking perk. It's going to go right above Surveillance. Just not really good enough. You shouldn't be kicking gens as Trapper. Don't kick gens as Trapper. Merciless Storm is another one of those passive gen slowdowns. I'm going to put it right above Corrupt. Whenever a generator is at its last 10%, there's these a bunch of rapid skill checks the survivors have to hit. If they miss a skill check, it blows the generator for 10% and then blocks the gen for 30 seconds. So this is another one of the, like I said, passive slowdown. Passive slowdown on Trapper is really good. It's just not good enough to run because it requires the survivors miss skill checks, and they're not always going to do that. So. Next up is Floods of Rage. This is another one of those information perks where you just simply cannot use the information that you are getting from it. So, you know, very rarely are you going to be close enough to take advantage of it. So we're going to put it right below. Actually, I'm going to probably put it down here. So it's just one of those perks that I just don't recommend you using, but you could use it if you don't really have any other choice. Darkness Revealed, another aura reading perk. This one's actually going to go down here below Rancor, I think. When you open a locker, all survivors within 8 meters of lockers have their auras revealed for a certain amount of seconds, which sounds cool, but if you're going to be doing that, you might as well run Ultimate Weapon, and we'll get to Ultimate Weapon when we get to Ultimate Weapon. Dissolution is a perk that I've been in argument with the community for a long time about whether or not it's good. I don't think it's good. I think it's crap. And the same applies here. Never use Dissolution on Trapper. We'll put it above Third Seal. Septic Touch. That's another Terror Radius perk. It's just crap, man. It's just don't use it. Awakened Awareness. While you're carrying a survivor, the auras of all survivors within a certain meter radius of you are shown to you. This is basically just a better Hangman's trick, but it's not good enough to utilize very well. So I'm just gonna go ahead and put it. Let's put it above Hysteria. I think that's a good place for it. Superior Anatomy, actually a perk I would recommend. Whenever a survivor vaults a window in front of you or next to you, you get a this perk will activate, and then the next time you vault it extra fast. So this is another one of those anti-loot perks. It's not strong enough to go in the highly recommended because it requires survivors to fast vault next to you, but it is strong enough that I will put it above every gen kicking perk and right below Plaything. So yeah, recommend it. Next up is Terminus. Whenever the game is over, whenever the last gen is completed, rather, and the exit gates are powered, every survivor who is injured becomes broken, and they stay that way for 60 seconds. This is not... You're going to be running Noed in your in-game build. You're not going to be running Terminus over Noed. Noed is a general perk, so there's none of this, oh, but what if I don't have Noed? You have fucking Noed. There's no way you don't have Noed and you have Terminus. You know what I mean? Unless you're fucking not even Prestige 1 in Trapper. So we're going to go ahead and we're just going to put Terminus down in the could use category. It's not great, but you know what? It'll work, I guess. Next up is Hex Face the Darkness. Whenever you injure a survivor, a totem on the map will light, and every survivor outside of your terror radius will scream periodically. This is not good because not only do you have a normal size terror radius at 32 meters, but also you're not able to take advantage of those screams. So we're just going to go ahead and put this in the never use category, but it is going to go fairly high up in the never use category. It's just barely missing out on the don't use if you don't have to. And Hubris. Whenever you're stunned, the survivor who stuns you is exposed for 20 seconds, I believe. This just isn't good enough to utilize. Even if you were to combine it with, say, your Enduring Spirit Fury build, it's just not good enough to utilize. The exposed is nice, but you're not really going to get a lot of use out of it. So I'm going to go ahead and put it in the could use, but I really wouldn't. Next up is Nowhere to Hide. You should not be kicking gens, but if you're going to kick gens, if you're going to run gen kicking perks, run Nowhere to Hide. I put this above every other gen kicking perk because the aura reading of survivors who might be creeping next to you is very, 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 very good. Next up is... this one is Game Afoot. Yes, Game Afoot. So, Game Afoot, whenever you break a pallet, while you... fuck, I'm sorry. I'm trying to... You know, I gotta look this one up. Skull Merchant perks are ones that I don't have by memory. So give me just a second while I look at this, because I'm trying to remember which... all of Skull Merchant... or there's 2 Skull Merchant perks that work around breaking pallets. Oh, here we go. Whenever you hit a survivor with the highest cumulative chase time with a basic attack, they become the obsession. Yeah, we're not worried about that. While you're chasing your obsession, I knew this was it. The Game Afoot activates, and you gain a 5% haste status effect for 10 seconds after damaging a generator or breaking a wall or pallet. You do not have the fucking time to be wasting kicking pallets and generators for no reason. While this might seem like a really good perk for Trapper because you break the pallet, then you get the haste for 10 seconds, it only happens while you're chasing the obsession. So I would put it in the could use category, but I really don't recommend you do it. So that leaves us with Thwack. Thwack activates after you hook a survivor, and then the next time you would break a pallet, survivors within your terror radius, I believe, scream. Let me do a double check on that one for you, since I have the wiki up already. I apparently do not remember my ABCs, which is always good to fucking know. Here we go. S-T... Where's the T's? Here we go. Next time, yes, after hooking a survivor, it activates. Next time you break a breakable wall or a pallet, all survivors within 28, 30, and 32 meters will scream and reveal their aura for 4 seconds. So this is another one of those perks that seems like it's a really good anti-loot perk. And honestly, it's better than Game Afoot for sure, but it's not good enough that I would recommend it. Because while you'll theoretically be breaking pallets more often as Trapper than as not, there's also always the opportunity for you to trap the pallets over full breaking them. So always remember that. So I'm going to go ahead and put this down here, probably above infectious. Above infectious sounds good. That's where we'll go ahead and put that. Next up is it's not, I keep wanting to say Leviathan. Leverage, that's the word. This perk is dog shit, and it has been really kind of honestly since its release. Whenever you hook a survivor for a certain amount of time, all survivors are slowed down healing based on the amount of survivors you hooked. Like, mathematically, it just doesn't do enough. When this perk first released, people were, like, doing the math and everything that by the time it would get to a point where it was actually useful, it just wouldn't be enough. Yeah, so each time you hook a survivor, it activates, gains a token up to a maximum of 10, and then for each token, the altruistic and personal healing speed of survivors are reduced by a stackable 3, 4, 5% for the next 30 seconds, and that's the next 30 seconds after you hook. So unless the survivors are fucking unhooking like right next to you, like right after you hook, it's just not useful. This perk, honestly, I'm not even gonna bother, bro.
Next up is Forced Hesitation, which is actually... No, wait, no. Is this Forced Hesitation? Yes, because... Wait. I feel so bad, bro. I was doing so good. I pride myself in knowing these things, like, really quickly. Let me just pull up the Singularity perks description so that I can fucking... so I can actually give you guys a... Because I know I know this one's Genetic Limits... And one of these is Forced Hesitation, which I think this one is Forced Hesitation. I'm fairly certain this one's Forced Hesitation. I completely fucking forgot what this one is and what it does. So let me... Forced Hesitation. Whenever you put a survivor in the dying state, by any means, all survivors within 16 meters of that survivor suffer from a 20% hindered status effect for 10 seconds. And then it goes on a cooldown. This sounds like a great idea. But very similar to the knockout example, you're not going to be slugging survivors that often. But if you are, I still really wouldn't use it, to be honest. I'll put it below Nemesis. Actually, I put it below Claustrophobia. I wouldn't really use it, but you could if that's all you have. Now, Genetic Limits. Whenever a survivor finishes a healing action, they are exhausted. Exhaustion is good. But let's remember they have to finish a healing action, and it's only the survivor who finishes the healing action. So I really wouldn't recommend this, actually. I'd probably don't use if you don't have to. It's not so bad that it goes at the bottom of the list, but it's definitely one of those perks that I just don't really think you should be using. We'll put it above Iron Maiden. And finally, it's called Machine Learning, by the way. It's another gen kicking perk. Whenever you kick a gen, it activates. And then whenever you kick a second gen, that generator turns to yellow. Whenever that second gen is completed, you are undetectable and gain 10% haste for 20, 25, or 30 seconds. But remember what I said at the very beginning of this. You should not be kicking gens as Trapper. You don't have that kind of time to waste. So we're going to put this down at the very bottom of the recommended. No. We're going to put this in the could use. You could use this if you don't have anything better, but you should definitely be having things that are better. I'm just saying. You should definitely be having things that are better. We're almost to the home stretch. We got this, guys. And this video, or this section of this section of the video is only a past and fucking hour. Yay. Okay, let's go. Alien Instinct is one of the worst perks in the game, and it's especially bad on Trapper. You cannot take advantage of the information that this perk gives you. Never use this perk. Whenever never use it. Well, we'll put it right above Make Your Choice, though. Rapid Brutality is actually a pretty decent M1 ability. Unfortunately for Trapper, it's not, because you cannot afford to lose Bloodlust as Trapper. So I will put it in the could use category. But honestly, I wouldn't use it if I were you. Finally, we have Ultimate Weapon, arguably the best info perk in the game for killers, and especially for Trapper. So we're going to put this in the highly recommended. We're going to go ahead and put this up here. Let's move Pain Resonance to always use. I think that's a much better thing. Pain Resonance to always use. But Ultimate Weapon's going to go way up here above NOED. No, actually, yeah. Above NOED, it's just the best information perk for killers. You can't go wrong with putting Ultimate Weapon in your build, straight up. Batteries Included is actually a pretty decent in-game perk, and this might surprise some people, but I think I'm going to put it in the recommended. I'm actually going to put it in the recommended up here next to Remember Me, because it's just a decent in-game perk. Once all the generators are completed, you're getting that speed boost constantly, and Trapper desperately needs that speed boost, so yeah, 100%. This is really, really good. I do recommend it. Next up is Friends Till the End. Whenever you hook someone who's not the obsession has their aura revealed to you and becomes exposed. And then when you hook the obsession, somebody else on the map screams and becomes the obsession. I can actually recommend this. Not highly.
right above Merciless Storm, I believe, because if the obsession's right next to you, when you hook someone who's not the obsession, then they get their aura, so you get some anti-loot power, and then they are exposed, so you get some really good stuff for you as an M1 killer. So yeah, I could actually recommend this. Two can play at that game. After you get stunned or blinded twice, a hex totem lights up, and then every time after that, when you get stunned or blinded, the survivor gets blinded for like 2 seconds, which is funny and also unironically kind of useful. I think I'm going to put this right below Friends to the End in the, no, I'm going to put this in could use. I'm going to put this in could use above Lethal Pursuer. Because theoretically, it's an anti-loop, but realistically, you're probably not going to be using it. And finally, we get to the unknowns perks. Now, I can tell, I think I can tell from each of these what each one is. So this one is the window one. This one is after you injure a survivor, you vault the next window 20% faster? Question mark? You vault the next window faster. I'm going to go ahead and put this in the could use category. I don't think it's that great, but it is above claustrophobia, which is a good sign. This one is the one where every time a survivor misses a skill check, you get a token, and then when you kick a djinn, that djinn regresses extra percentages based on the amount of tokens you currently have. This is honestly a pretty bad perk. But it's not bad enough to say never use. I'll put it in don't use if you don't have to. It's another djinn kicking perk, so you definitely shouldn't be using it. But we'll put it below Dragon's Grip. And finally, this is the djinn kicking perk where when you kick it, your tear radius goes onto the djinn and you're undetectable for, I think, 30 seconds. If you're going to be djinn kicking, put this in your djinn kicking build. We're going to put it right below Pop because that undetectable is just so good on Trapper. Now, I can't fit all of this tier list onto the screen by this recording, so I'm going to go ahead and download it after I finish this recording and put it up on screen just to kind of give you guys, a visual that you could use. These are how every perk interacts with Trapper, and with this recording, you have officially reached the conclusion of the video. So enjoy the last couple of minutes as I talk to you guys whenever I record that part of the video. I am going to sleep now. You guys have a wonderful day, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the video. The final rating score of the Trapper's design is a 3.1 out of 5. I find the Trapper to be full of potential, perhaps even the character with the biggest potential in the game, held back by an amalgamation of the time period he was released in, power creep, and a refusal to update him for the current era of the game. If I could pick my 3 favorite things about the Trapper, it would be the Naughty Bear skin, the Honestone add-on, and catching someone in a trap does genuinely feel fun, satisfying, and tickle my brain in just the right way. My 3 most hated aspects are the lack of him spawning with all of his traps, the bland array of cosmetics, and the distinct lack of lore where there is clearly more of his story to be told. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I spent probably about 2 weeks writing. God knows how long the editing is going to take. I actually gave my channel members a teaser when I was around halfway through the script, so that was a fun time. And of course, you guys know I want to hear your thoughts down below. And as always, a special thank you to the channel members listed on screen now. If you want to know how to become a channel member today and get perks like seeing videos early, merch discount codes, and more, then please click that join button down below. I love you all so much, and I will see you in the next one.